See this, guys? The weather is always playing around over here. It was literally just 91 degrees and now it's 60 degrees and cloudy, and it's going to rain tomorrow. But I like this kind of weather. Hello and welcome again to the channel. No More White here again. Still working on the IS300. In today's video I am going to try to button up every little thing I need to button up before I can actually try and start the car, or at least get to the wiring aspect, which is going to be a little daunting for some, maybe even myself, but I'm going to try and get that done. But today there's just a few things that I need to handle, like plumbing the blow-off valve, getting the wastegate installed, capping off a few breather lines, and getting the mass airflow sensor installed. I'm trying to think of other things. I can't really think of anything else, but let me just show you what I've done already. Again, sorry if this might seem like a collection of random stuff that I'm doing today, but it is all stuff that's necessary in order to, you know, move forward in the build. So just bear with me, and we'll just get right into it. So the first thing I did was there's usually this breather line that goes from here back to the PCV valve right there, or this guy right here. I don't have a catch can quite yet, and honestly I don't need a catch can to just start and run the car. Yeah, this, you know, might blow a little bit of oil vapors out here for now, but for just starting the car, it's not going to kill anything. I eventually will run both these two into a catch can somewhere. I don't know where at, but that is the goal with those. That's what you need to do, is to run those into a catch can so that you can bleed off the crankcase pressure, because obviously we're boosting the car now, so that means there will be some extra crankcase pressure. This is where that hose used to go right here, so that the vacuum could suck in the oil vapors and they get burned. But all I did was take this off, I put a cap on here, and I use a hose clamp. Don't just put a cap on here without at least putting a hose clamp, because, you know, with boost, I've seen them just blow the caps right off. So I do have a cap on here that's actually a cap that's a size too small, so I forced it on there so I know it'll be on there tight, and then I use a hose clamp, and then I put this back on. Secondly, if you're going to be running aftermarket injectors, I don't have any right now. I'm going to run on the stock injectors. I've seen people run the stock injectors up to about 6 or 7 psi, and they've been okay. So I'm going to try my luck with the stock injectors, which I think are 250 cc injectors. I can always raise up my fuel pressure to kind of get a little bit more out of them if I need to, which I probably will have to. But if you're running aftermarket injectors that don't require the air assist system, because you can buy two different kinds. These factory injectors are air assist, meaning that this hose right here goes down into the fuel rail, and it helps atomize the fuel better by, you know, blowing air into the injector ports. Since I'm using the stock injectors, I'm going to keep that attached. If you have aftermarket injectors that don't require them, all you would do is just take this hose off of here, cap this hose just like I capped this one, and then remove this hose from the pipe that's right here. You don't need to cap that. You don't need to do anything else with that. You could just leave it off. I got to get the MAP sensor installed, and from the looks of it, I'm probably going to have to go get screws for that, because the cxracing doesn't have any of that. I need to get the blow-off valve installed, and I need to get it plumbed to a vacuum source. I put just a tiny little piece of cardboard right there in between the silicone coupling and the metal, you know, cut I made just temporarily. Hopefully it holds up just for now. I didn't put the bumper on yet. That's just like not a huge concern at the moment. And then I went on ahead and also trimmed my cover, that little hole right there, so that this thing sits nicely again and covers everything up like so. I'm not going to run the engine without this cover because it looks ugly without it, so I definitely had to trim that in order to clear this here fuel return. But it's just a bunch of little stuff I got going on today. So this is the wastegate that comes with the cxracing kit. It's not something I want to run, and I'm not going to run it long term. However, I did order a wastegate from cxracing. Now, you guys can obviously order whatever 44mm wastegate you want. I personally would like a tile MVR, but those things are like $450 or something like that, and I'm just not gonna spend that money on it right now. At least not right now while I'm trying to just get the car to make, you know, 3 to 5 pounds of boost right now. That's all I'm after, just to make sure I get a handle on it and that I can tune the car right and just make sure that everything's working as it should. So I'm ordered a wastegate off of cxracing. It's similar to a VS Racing wastegate, and I'm just going to run that one. It comes with a 5 psi spring. However, that thing is not going to ship until the 15th, which is crazy. I don't know why it takes so long. So in the meantime, I am going to install this wastegate that came with the kit. However, this comes with a 12 psi spring, and I don't want that in there, and it doesn't have any other spring options, so I do got to get that installed. It does come with a little dump pipe that they gave, just kind of shoots straight down to the ground, which is fine for now. I think eventually I'll probably have this recirculated back into the downpipe or into the exhaust. Another thing I need to do today is get this wastegate on, or excuse me, blow off valve on. I am going to run this one. You know, I would get another one later on down the road, but I'm just going to run this one right here. It is adjustable. You do need to make sure that it stays shut, especially if you're using the stock ECU and you're trying to keep the ECU happy. You don't want it to have any leaks. You don't want it bleeding off any air that the mass airflow sensor needs to read. So I'm going to get this installed today. It did come with some screws, so in a gasket, so I really hope that all this stuff fits. Alright, I got the blow-off valve tightened on. Thank goodness it came with the right screws. Has a little gasket in there. And I got it plumbed up. Just run a vacuum line to the intake manifold, and I actually just used, it actually was supplied with a T. So what I did is I teed off. I already had this vacuum line running to the fuel pressure regulator, and if you're running the stock ECU, which I'm going to be doing, as I mentioned before in my other video, the factory fuel pressure regulator doesn't see vacuum. So I have a check valve in here coming off of that T, and I have a check valve on this side going here because I only want the fuel pressure regulator to see boost. I don't want it to see any vacuum. Vice versa, on the other side, the blow-off valve needs to see vacuum because that's how it operates. So when you're, you know, hard on the throttle and you let off, throttle plate closes, then there's going to be a tremendous amount of vacuum in here, and that will pull the blow-off valve open, and that will release the built-up air pressure. So. Okay, so in case anyone wants to know what the inside of a wastegate looks like, you have your normal wastegate. This is pretty much a tile knockoff. There are different types of wastegates. There's electronic wastegates as well. This is just a mechanical wastegate. It operates on boost pressure, but basically you have a top port of a wastegate, which is this guy up here. If you wanted to run, say, CO2 controlled boost control, you'd run your CO2 line to the top of this gate, and then you would use you know, some type of computer to apply dome pressure to the top of this, and that will keep the gate shut, thus allowing you to build more boost. But the basic operation of a wastegate is that this part right here on the bottom is the inlet. You know, that's where exhaust gases are going to come in from the manifold, and then over here is the outlet, or the dump pipe, or the screamer tube, or whatever people want to call it. But basically you have a spring that's inside here, so if you take this thing off, I've already taken the spring out. This is a, I don't know, there's various springs. This one I believe is a 12 psi spring. So this is what's holding this piston shut in here. So if you look inside here, there's a little piston here that will open and close. Let me see if I can get closer for you guys. There's a piston in here inside of this that will open. You see it opens like this, and it can close. So as you get to your predetermined boost pressure, which is determined by this here spring, it could be a 5-pound spring, it could be 10-pound spring, it could, whatever spring that you have in here. As you get to that level, what's going to happen is this piston that's inside here is going to start pushing up against the spring, and that's going to allow exhaust gases to bypass the turbo and pretty much come out of this outlet, thus not allowing you to go past a certain amount of boost. Now, sometimes you get boost creep, and that just is dependent on if you have maybe wastegate that is too small or the wastegate that's in a bad position on the manifold. But this is the basic principle. Air comes in. As you reach your certain target PSI or whatever spring you have, it'll start to open up this here piston and allow excess gas to kind of just bypass the turbo and get, you know, just dumped straight into the atmosphere. That is how these will work. Alternatively, if you have the top on here like this, and say you're running a CO2 system, you would be applying dome pressure to the top of this, which is essentially doing what the spring is doing, except you're using CO2, which is, you know, far more efficient at keeping the gate shut. So if you wanted, say, 30 pounds of dome pressure, you know, it doesn't actually translate to 30 psi of boost, but you know, you'll have to work that out. But pretty much that is doing exactly what the spring is doing. It's applying pressure to the top of this dome to keep this piston from opening up, thus building boost. So that's pretty much the basics on how these work. Now, in my application or in your guys' application, we will be running a boost reference source to the bottom of the gate, which is this port right here. I don't know if you guys have heard bottom and top of gate, but this is the bottom of the gate. We'll be running a vacuum line from the compressor housing, which is the small little nipple that's on the compressor outlet, and you'll run a boost line straight to here. So that way, when you're building boost on your compressor, as you know, meet your target, the boost pressure will help open up this valve. You know, in addition to the spring, it'll help open up the valve so that you can get your desired boost pressure. So that's how this is going to work. For you guys that are not using CO2, you can just let this top port just vent to atmosphere. It doesn't need to be connected to anything. I just have this on here just because it looks better than just having the wastegate just straight open. So then I went on ahead and ran a boost reference line. You see in the cxracing compressor housing, it should come with a little nipple there that's on the front that's screwed in. That is ran down to the wastegate, to the bottom port of the wastegate. So just make sure you do connect that. That will aid in helping open the wastegate when it builds enough boost. And the top port on the wastegate, remember to just leave that vented to atmosphere, hooked up to nothing. As far as the hardware is concerned, everything now officially is on. Intercooler's on, all the hot side exhaust stuff is on. I don't have the remaining piece of the exhaust on yet, but I just only have the downpipe on. But yeah, everything is on, and I mean, we're pretty close to getting this thing started. The next thing I would need to do is to just do some wiring here in the ECU area. So yeah, I know today was just pretty much a collection of random things to do with the car, but you know, all these little things you got to do just to make sure that it'll start and idle and run right, especially on the stock computer. Trust me, if I had a standalone, I'd still be trying to do wiring and even more wiring on top of that just to get everything correct. But nonetheless, we did make some good progress today. Got the wastegate on, got the blow-off valve on, got both those plumbed up correctly. Just a bunch of little stuff that we got to take care of, but I'm happy so far. So I'm hoping in the next 1 to 2 videos we should be able to get this thing to start up and idle. check for leaks, make sure nothing is going on. But aside from that, it's looking pretty good so far. So I appreciate you guys watching the video, and just stay tuned for the next one. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.